Welcome to the Sailing and Cruising the East Coast of the United States podcast. I'm Bela and Mike. This episode is part of a series I recorded with Mike Malkoff during our sailing trip up the East Coast. We were relocating his Hunter 44 deck salon from Brunswick, Georgia to Burlington, Vermont. Please note that the video version of this podcast primarily features photographs and short video clips I captured along our journey. The audio was recorded on the boat, typically in the evenings at anchor or in a marina, although we did record a few segments while underway. Join Mike and me as we explore the United States East Coast aboard his Hunter 44 deck salon. All right. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Hey, Bela. How you doing?
So here we are at Hoppeno's Marina in Catskill, New York. And why would we come here, Mike, to this beautiful, modern, clean, spick and span marina, he said facetiously with loads and loads of sarcasm?
Well, if it wasn't for the marina, it was for the excitement in downtown Catskill.
Well, that too. That I almost forgot.
Well, I guess to be cut to the chase, the reason that you go to Hoppeno's Marina in the Catskills off of the Hudson is we will be traveling through the Champlain locks to get to Lake Champlain, and unfortunately none of the bridges are high enough to get under. So we're able to travel literally from New York City to Miami, getting under bridges opening for us, going outside. But once you try to go into Lake Champlain, the locks, the bridges can be as low as 17 feet. So essentially everybody going to Lake Champlain or north to Canada has to take their mast down.
Or to the Great Lakes if they come up the Hudson River and go the Erie Canal.
Correct. And yes, you have two choices. You can go directly north to Lake Champlain, or you can go directly east in the Erie Canal, which is 45 locks. Something I wouldn't want to do. And I guess to explain, when we say locks, if it's not the Jewish deli locks that we're talking about, but we're talking about the locks that change the level of water, because you're going into different bodies of water that are different levels. Would that be a simple explanation?
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you can't go through rapids or waterfalls, so they've created a series of locks to go around these locations, and depending on which direction you're going, you actually drive or sail your boat into a lock. They close the door behind you, and if you're going to raise up, they fill the lock, your boat lifts up to the next level, and you go out the other side. So short story is we have to go through a series of 12 locks to get to Lake Champlain, but the bridges there can be anywhere from 30 to 20 feet to 17 feet high, and they don't open, so you have to take the mast down. So Hoppeno's is one of the marinas, in my estimation, just about the only one left that can do this and take your mast down. There are a couple of others that do it. One, I think I mentioned to you, we went by, is a self-serve type system with a crane that you can use, but I'm not interested in moving a 700-pound mast with a handmade crane. So that's why we're at Hoppeno's.
Yeah, so this was the first time I've ever experienced taking down a mast, and it's a fair amount of work. I have a lot of respect for people who make this trip twice a year. In other words, go south in the fall and come north in the spring on sailboats, because they're taking their mast up and down twice a year. So it took us about a day to get prepared to take the mast down. So what does being prepared mean? What were some of the things we did, Mike?
Well, I think the most important thing is, in order for the mast to come down, you need to, I'll use the word, you have to isolate it, which means everything that is connected to the mast has to be detached from it. And, you know, when you kind of look at it and say, well, how much is attached to the mast? Until, as you said, it took us a day until you sit and look at it, you realize that almost everything on the boat is attached to the mast in some way, shape, or form. So Starting with the simplest, all of the lines that go to the sails, they have to be detached from the boat itself. And in my situation, all the lines go back into the cockpit, so you can actually control all the sails from the cockpit. All those lines have to be removed from the cockpit, and we have to run that up to the front of the boat to the mast, and we have to roll them up and tie them to the mast so that that comes apart. The next thing is all of the implements that are at the top of the mast, all your electronic stuff, the radar, the wind, all those sensors, and there are about a dozen wires that run up and down through your mast that are connected at the bottom inside the boat. All of those have to be disconnected, and there is a little panel that you disconnect them, but it is a myriad of wires, and you have to pull them up. And then you also have to remove your head sail because the head sail and the furling will be removed, but that furling will be removed and brought back to the mast and tied to the mast. That those two don't need to come apart. And then finally, the last thing, which is also a challenge, is the boom. And the boom is not a light or small object, and also the boom vang has to be detached. And I'm sure there's probably several other things I'm not thinking of, but that in a nutshell are all of those things that have to be detached and put somewhere because they're going to come along with you on the boat when you leave. So did I forget anything, Bela?
No, I think that was a pretty thorough explanation. And then, so once we had all of that stuff detached from the mast and either strewed out or on deck or on the dock next to us.
Yes.
We then, so what happens is when they lift the mast off the boat, you then build some kind of cradle structure to hold the mast on the boat in a horizontal position while you're going through the locks, because the mast is longer than the boat, so we just can't lay it on the deck. So the mast, I think, is 55 feet?
52,
52 feet. And so the boat's 45, so 50, it hangs over. So we ended up, the marina is good about this. They have scraps of wood from people who were here in the fall and put their masts back up, and they left the wooden structures there, so we scavenged some of that. They also went out and bought some new wood because there was a fair number of boats there. They didn't quite have enough scrap pieces of wood. And so Mike, being the engineer that he is, walked around the docks and looked at the other boats and what they had built, and then came up with a great design. So we have 3 supports for the mast. We have one near the front of the boat, one sort of just in front of the Dodger, and then on Hunters we have sort of an arch structure that's very solid and very strong. And for that we got a big block of like styrofoam, that rigid styrofoam that comes in packaging materials, and that supports the mast on top of the arch. So once we had all of that stuff built, and we sort of thought about how to, I mean, we're out there with saws, and Mike's cutting wood, and we're nailing stuff together and screwing stuff together, and then you got to figure out how to attach this cradle to the boat.
Yeah, and I've done this once before, so I did have a little insight. So I did have all the right tools. I had bought plenty of wood screws to hold it together. And the first time I did it, it worked great, but it really took up a lot of room on the front of the boat. And I noticed one of the other boats had come up with a little bit different structure that was smaller and did the job just as well without taking as much room on the boat, because once all of that comes down on the boat, it is a spider web of stuff to trip over, because the spreaders stay attached to the mast along with all the rigging. So all the rigging is now semi-loose. It's no longer tight, and all of this is sort of hanging all over the boat. But once we completed, I should say this before we get into the arch or the structure we built for the mast. We did everything except for one thing that the marina does not want you to touch. They don't want you to touch the rigging that is holding the mast onto the boat, that is keeping that structure up. And on my boat, which is a Hunter, it doesn't have a backstay, so there are 4 connection points on the port and the starboard side where the rigging is held up, and that also includes the furler for the head sail. So 5 connection points. Those they want you to leave alone. They will do that because when they start loosening that, they've already hooked the crane up to the mast to keep it stable, because once all of those points are loosened, then the mast obviously no longer has a structure to keep it standing correctly. So
once we built the cradle, we then told the guys we're ready, and when it was our turn, they said, "Come on over," and you come over to this separate slip that's over by the crane. Now, I will say the crane is a very interesting crane. It's not what you envision as a crane that you see on TV. I think that, so Mike is 72, I'm 71.
You really had to get into ages?
Yes, and I think the crane is older than our combined ages. That's why I was getting into it.
Yeah, I think you could have done that another way without. You could have said it was probably built in the Lincoln presidency.
Yeah, I think it was originally powered by steam.
It is. When we use the term crane, we only use that to identify it in its function, not because of how it looks. It is not your modern type of structure, and you as an engineer definitely enjoyed watching how they operated it, wondering when someone was going to lose a hand or a finger.
Yeah, it has no guards on it. It's got a motor. It's got all these big gears, and the guys, the guy who runs it, I'm surprised he has all his fingers left. But regardless, they did a really great job. So you bring the boat over, and then one guy sort of gets lifted by the crane, the cable on the crane. He's got a big sling on with him, and he sort of stands in the sling, and they kind of lift him up to just above the spreaders on the mast, and then he straps this sling underneath the spreaders, and they put some tension on it, so now the crane is sort of holding the mast, and then once they got that done, he slides down a rope back literally slides down a rope like
Cirque du Soleil.
Like a Cirque du Soleil, yes, and then while the other guys are sort of loosening all of the stays that hold up the mast, all of the rigging, and then as all that stuff becomes loose, they have the crane is actually supporting the mast. Then they lift the mast up, and on this sailboat, as on many sailboats, this is a deck stepped mast, which means the bottom of the bottom of the mast actually rests on top of the deck. On some boats, and particularly older boats, the mast actually goes through a hole in the deck and rests on top of the keel. But on most modern boats, that's not how it's done. So regardless, they pick the mast up, and as they're picking it up, one person is kind of pushing the bottom of the mast towards the stern of the boat, and that's the way they picked it up. They can pivot the mast and sort of lay it down slowly. And that's sort of a tricky job because you're trying to get the cradles all lined up, and hopefully you made them the right width to accept the mast. But anyway, that all sort of came together quite nicely. My guess is we were over in that slip for maybe an hour and a half?
No, I was going to say 45 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, it was quick. And once it's in there, they don't strap it down or anything.
Right,
once it's in there, you're out, and next boat
comes in.
And the next boat comes in.
So they plopped it down in the cradle. Everything looked okay. We came back to our normally assigned slip, and then we spent another day, sort of strapping it down and
Yep, ratchet
Make-
straps.
You have more ratchet straps than I've seen on the shelves at Harbor Freight.
Because I bought all
You
of
bought
their.
them all?
I
Yeah.
bought them all.
And so we got it all strapped down. We got the boom. The boom, we could rest on the deck, on the side deck. We were able to fit it in there.
And I did tie it, secure it.
Yeah, and that's secure. So that all came together quite well. And I think, yeah, we got everything ready. And we're ready to go through the canal, but the canal was still closed.
Which is, I guess, part two of this story, is the canal system, which, as we said before, is Lake Champlain, or the Champlain canals, and the Erie Canal system, and it's all operated by the state. And their opening date was May 16th, a Friday. And we actually, because we made such good time coming up from the south with sailing outside, we actually got here early. So it was like, gee, this is great. We got here early. We dropped the mast. We're ready to go. And they announced they're not opening the canals for several reasons that was very hard to understand, that the water was too high, the water was too low. There's a car floating around in the canals. One of the dams broke. Regardless, they said, we're not opening on May 16th, and we'll let you know when. And that was it.
And that was it. So I bid Mike a farewell.
You very quickly, as soon as you learned we weren't going to be, they weren't opening that week.
They weren't opening that week.
You made a quick exit.
And I had to be back for a wedding. So I knew I couldn't stay, even if the canal did open. I had to go home the following weekend. So I went home, and
you luckily live a couple of hours.
That's like an hour and 45 minutes from
Yeah,
here, from Catskill. So that worked out great. It was a quick trip home, and actually I got to go to my niece's graduation. She graduated from optometry school. So that was really nice to go to. I wasn't expecting to go to that, but thanks to the canal being closed, I was able to go that. And then I went to my other niece's wedding the following weekend. And then hopefully the canal will open and we'll get back together, and that'll be another episode.
So, Bela, I'm glad you were able to go home as I sit here in Catskill, New York, awaiting the canal opening.
Yes. Enjoy downtown Catskill, Mike.
I will.
Thanks for listening, folks. Talk to you soon. Bye. And as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact us at sailingtheeast, that's all one word, @gmail.com. That's sailingtheeast @gmail.com. Thanks for listening.